All right, it's my Southwest Potters Gathering out at my property that I've been talking about, and we've got, I don't know, maybe 12, 13 people here today. Maybe more will come later, but we're firing pottery early because the wind's gonna pick up later, so it's better to get those firings done first thing in the morning. I think it's, I don't know, 8 o'clock maybe. We've been preheating some pottery for a while, so these fires have been burning for a while as we preheated them, and the first firing is actually underway. Wes is over here firing some organic painted pottery, some Sacaton type stuff. And so that's this one right here, and then over here, I'm preheating my pot. I've got one pot to fire today, and then there's a bunch of students' pottery, and I'll be firing that in a little while. Some of you may recall that the Southwest Kiln Conference, which was scheduled to be held in Silver City, New Mexico in the fall of last year, was rained out. And so we had the conference, but we didn't get to fire any pottery. And when that happened, I scheduled another event so that some of us could get together and fire our pottery. And this is that event.
We're just gonna wing it. That are good, right? We're gonna hope
it started early Saturday morning. We just started preheating a lot of our pottery around this fire. But at this stage, I'm about ready to start firing this, so some of the pots that aren't going to be fired in this fire are being moved to another location so that I can focus on just the pottery that's going to be fired here. Now, as we move through this event and show you the different firings, I'm going to number them on the screen so that you can try to keep track of them, because there were quite a few firings and there are different types of firings. So I'll go back to those numbers each time I show you a different one so you can keep track of what we're looking at. Now, some of you might recognize this pot. This is that El Paso polychrome jar that I made for the Ancient Pottery Challenge. And I didn't get a chance to fire it when I made it, so here I am firing it at the event. And these other pots that are going around it are just different pots that people that came to the event brought with them that are being fired. And these cover sherds that I'm firing here, these are Wes's that he made, and they needed to be fired. They were unfired cover sherds, so I'm just putting them in there to be fired, but also to protect the pottery from coals falling down into those spaces. The Ancient Potters Club is my weekly Zoom pottery class. I have people in this class from literally all over the world. And we cover all kinds of things. We cover making pottery, mostly, but we also cover how to collect and process wild clay. We talk a little bit about firing, but the truth is, firing is pretty complex. There's a lot of subtleties to it, so it's a hard thing to just teach orally or in writing. And so it's no surprise that a large part of the people that showed up for this gathering were members of my Ancient Potters Club, people who we've been making pottery together for a while and wanted to get some hands-on experience.
So this is really burning.
Woo, that is sweltering.
Okay, so this is the fire with the mineral paint. This is just going to be a regular hot fire. This is not anything special like we have to do with organic paint. And then over here, this is Wes's fire, and he's got a little bowl that he fired a while back, and it's all covered with carbon, so that the clay naturally has carbon in it. If you don't oxidize well enough, it'll blacken up. Also, it can absorb carbon out of the atmosphere, depending on the atmosphere it's fired in. So anyways, the bowl came out black. I wish I'd have showed you beforehand. But anyway, he's trying to burn the carbon off. So this is actually a second firing for this bowl. And hopefully it'll come out, what, red on white? Is that what we're looking for?
Well, I want it to be reduced and then black on white.
Okay, really well, hopefully we can reduce it. But at any rate, we burn the carbon out, we'd have red on white. So we'll see. Hopefully we're burning carbon right now. And then over here, we've got another fire, and this is Kyle's fire. And this is...
yeah, I've got...
Is there something in there already?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And this is organic paint. This is Sacaton, right?
Organic paint.
Okay, so this is going to be a Sacaton type firing, organic paint. We'll see how it does. And the little bricks are what? Just trying to block some of that breeze?
I was trying to block some of the wind.
Okay.
It was coming from that direction. But
awesome. And what kind of fuel have you got there?
That is split juniper.
Split juniper. All right. Thank you.
Archaeology professor.
No, never studied archaeology in college.
Andy.
Do you think I need to put some more little pieces of wood on this side?
Now here's Wes's firing where he's trying to burn the carbon out of that pot that was previously fired. And he's just now pulling the coals off of it. Hopefully he's not only burned the carbon off of the pot, which we can see here it is coming out white, so we look like we've done that. But also we hope that we have reduced that iron in there to black. Now, in order to keep it black, theoretically, he's going to cover it with this pot to keep out all oxygen while the bowl cools, and then pull the pot out and actually look at it maybe hours later once it's very cool. So he put the pot over it, pushed it down really good, and now he's putting dirt around the outsides of the pot just to make sure that we don't get any air leaking in, which could turn that iron red. He wants it to be black on white, like an ancient membranous bowl. So we'll see how that comes out later on down the road.
Mexico, they're cleaning it up a little bit,
So now we're back to Kyle's organic paint firing, and we're hoping here that he has good blacks in his organic paint, hasn't fired it too much to burn out those organic paints, and hasn't fired it not enough to kind of clean up the clay and have those colors be bright. Now, when you first look at it, you'll see a lot of ash on it, so it looks gray. But once you clean that off, it's usually a nice black underneath there. Unfortunately, I didn't take a lot of pictures of finished, cleaned up pottery. I got a lot of pictures of pottery coming out of the fire like this, but I didn't go back and photograph it once they'd cleaned the ash off. So I have to apologize for that. In this case, that little jar there came out a little dark, and the little duck pot came out quite dark. So the duck was actually refired and cleaned up pretty well. So Kyle had so many of these organic paint pots that he actually did 2 firing, one after the other. So he pulled the first batch out, that was firing number 4, and loaded the second batch right up into the same spot for firing number 5 right here. So now we're back to my firing. While all this was going on, mine has just been sitting here firing and slowly cooling down. At this point, it's all burned to coals, and I'm just going to start pulling those coals away from the pot so they can start cooling. And that little pot had a mind of its own and decided to escape. It just rolled right out of the firing. So once it's had a chance to cool a little bit, I'll just start slowly kind of pulling these pots away so they can cool slowly. And I make sure I don't touch them with my gloves, because at first they're so hot that if you touch them with a leather glove, it'll leave a black mark on the clay. And so I just use my shovel or something metal to pull them away to start with. So once I got all the smaller surrounding pots pulled away, it was time to pull away the big one in the middle. That's my big El Paso polychrome jar that I made for the Ancient Pottery Challenge. And just kind of gently rolling it off of those stones and setting it on those coals to cool. And I think everything in this firing came out pretty good. This is actually the work of 5 different potters. Myself, Angela, Wes, Craig, and Carol all had pots in here, and I don't think anything really broke. I think the little canteen had a couple of small cracks in it.
Right on it. Roll it right in.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Oh, it looks nice though. Oh man, it's hot, it's hot. It's hot, it's hot, it's hot. Yeah, it looks like you got good whites and black on that.
Yeah, that one was painted with bee weed.
After, okay. And that's all painted with mineral paint and clay. All right, thank you.
Service that you had your meal off of.
Now for the 6th and final firing of Saturday. Kyle is firing this mineral painted bowl in a charcoal style firing with bricks, the way Tony Soares does it. I'll put a link to Tony's video up above and in the doobly-doo in case you're interested in learning more about this style of firing. So he put some cover sherds around the bowl to protect it from the carbon from the charcoal, and then he just filled it up with charcoal and lit it on fire and just let it burn for a couple of hours. Can you tell us a little bit about how it got there?
Okay, so yeah, this is a member style bowl, and the idea is the black paint is actually a red hematite. The goal was to fire it in a reduced fire, so it takes away all the oxygen and the red stuff stays black. And the first time I fired it a couple days ago, it went all wrong. Actually, the white turned totally black, beautiful black, and the black here was kind of this dull, dusty red. And what had happened is it didn't get a good oxidation to begin with, I think. And there's just way too much carbon, and everything just turned black, but it didn't get rid of the carbon at all. And I didn't get enough circulation. I'm pretty sure of that with that first firing. So with the second firing, I made sure that things were raised up high, so I had good circulation underneath it. I fired it hot, and then once the fire was totally done, I smothered it. I put a big stainless steel cooking pot over the top, sealed it up with dirt, and just let it sit. So the idea is that the red paint would have been black by then, and we just don't give it any access to oxygen. So if I were to refire this, I think, and just fire it on an open fire, all this black paint would turn red. But this is the way the members did it. And sometimes you'll see gradations where they'll have some black and some red. And so I'm real happy. This turned totally black, and the whites are white. Surprised me, actually. That makes sense?
Yeah, good job. Just hold it up and I'm going to get a close-up of it.
I took a little bit of video when you pulled it down.
Wow! Wow, 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 wow. Watch out, people.
Oh, grab that chair real quick. It's almost in the fire.
I was just zooming in when that thing hit. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Here's the obligatory group photograph. Unfortunately, we didn't get everybody in it. So I also captured Carol a little bit
Hopefully I
later.
behold one
And,
like that
and the
someday.
amazing part is it's clay from Benson, so it's local.
Oh.
Thank you for coming, Carol.
Oh, nice. Ooh. Yeah, it's a winner.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Happy days, huh?
No crack.
Interesting.
On Saturday afternoon, some people drove up to Chiricahua National Monument, which was nearby. Some of us went out and dug clay. Some of us explored the ruins. Some people visited Johnny Ringo's grave. By Sunday morning, we were ready to start firing again because the wind was nice and calm. And so, here we are getting ready to start our second day of firings.
Yeah, sleep good. I wish my husband would turn me on a little.
Second day out here at my property at the Potter's Gathering, and we have a few more pots to fire. I actually held some back yesterday just so that we could have some to fire today because I wasn't sure everybody was going to be there first thing on Saturday. So I thought if I had some to fire on Sunday, then maybe everybody could at least experience the firing. So what we have today is some people came from Santa Fe and they brought some Micaceous pottery. So we're going to fire that. And I have a little organic painted bowl that's a test bowl that has different slips on it. I'm going to see how the organic paint does on different slips. So that's all we have, and then we'll probably wrap up here and people will start heading home sometime around noon today.
Next time I'll make homemade tortillas.
Here we are preheating some of the pottery and some tortillas for breakfast.
Well, we're off to
And that little pot that I have there, that bowl, that is painted with 9 different kinds of smectite clay slips and 3 different kinds of organic paints. So I can kind of see how they work, especially comparing one to the other. And I wanted to smudge the inside, so I put the bowl right down on the ground, but I really didn't clear the coals far enough away. And I built a little fire and I lit it off, and it didn't quite get up to temp, so I added some more wood. And by the time I was done, all that charcoal had kind of fallen down into that little pit that the pot was in and just smothered it. So when I finally pulled the pot out, it hadn't oxidized well at all. It was just kind of black and sooty all over, kind of a misfire. So I was pretty frustrated, as I tend to be when a pot doesn't come out the way I expect, and especially when it's, mostly your own fault. So I brooded about it a little bit and thought about what to do, and I decided I'm going to fire it again right away. And so I put the pot back, put some more fuel around it, and I fired it a second time in the same location. And it got up to temperature. But again, trying to smudge it was difficult. I hadn't cleared out enough space around it. Kind of left a little hole. So the coals kind of fell down into that hole. And again, just kind of smothered my little pot. And again, they were a little cleaner than last time, but it was still pretty dark. Much darker than I wanted, and certainly too dark to really run the experiment the bowl was intended for. So while all this was going on, that Micaceous firing was also going on. So at this point that you're seeing it, it's already burning down quite a bit from where it was. And so as it starts to cool, we pull the coals away and start to pull the pots out. But these ladies that made the Micaceous pottery, they wanted it to have lots of fire clouds, much more than it had. So they kind of went to work throwing grass and manure on these pots to try to blacken them up. And so they had a lot of fun experimenting with different forms of organic matter to add to the pots to make black fire clouds and other blemishes on the pottery. And they were real happy with what came out. I didn't get any pictures of those cleaned up like I did in some of the other pots as well. There was also an additional firing that I didn't get any video of. It was a mineral painted firing that Dawn did, and it's kind of going on in this part of the image, but you can't really see it on the left-hand side there. Anyway, the best part of this whole gathering was just getting together with like-minded people and sharing information, which is what we're doing here. So as all the weekend's activities began to wrap up late on Sunday morning, people began to pack up to go home. I was still frustrated about that little organic painted bowl, and I fired it a third time. And this time, I fired it up on some kiln furniture off the ground, and I made sure to leave plenty of airspace, and I fired it plenty hot, and I finally cleaned off the carbon. So it came out pretty good. I mean, it still has some dark places, but it's been fired 3 times. I was just glad the organic paint hadn't completely burned out at this point. So the experiment did come out, and here are the results of that. 1. Garbage Dump, St. John's, Arizona. 2. Stinking Springs, Concho, Arizona. 3. Cannonball, Cortez, Colorado. 4. Cow Ranch, Blanding, Utah. 5. Sacaton, St. David, Arizona. 6. Mustang, Concho, Arizona. 7. Number 10, Arizona Strip. 8. Commercial Bentonite. All right, the first annual Southwest Potters Gathering out at my property is over. It's Sunday around noon. I think we had about 18 people show up from all over the country. We did at least 10 different firings, all different kinds. We did some that were smothered and reduced iron. We did some that were organic paint firings. We did some that were just surface mineral paint firings. We did some micaceous pottery. We did some with bricks and charcoal. I mean, the whole gambit of pottery firings. There were some people who had talked about doing a trench kiln firing. I wasn't comfortable doing that. I've never actually done a trench kiln firing, and there was nobody here that had any experience with that. So we ended up not doing it. But I think we had a lot of successes. You know, as you always do with outdoor firings. We also had some failures. We had some things that broke. We had some things that the paint didn't come out as expected. But overall, I think it was a great event. A lot of people learned. I think that's the biggest thing. Not the firings, not the pottery that was made. The biggest thing, in my opinion, is the people sitting around the campfire and sharing sources of clay or minerals, sharing actual minerals in clay, sharing information about how we fire, how we make pottery, or some ideas we have about, you know, how to proceed, how to make better pottery, these kind of things. And so to me, that's the most valuable part, is just sharing information with people. And there was a lot of that. I think we had a good time. A lot of us camped out. Some people stayed in a hotel. During the day, some of us went and collected clay. So another group went up to Chiricahua National Monument and enjoyed the natural scenery there. It was just a lot of things. The weather wasn't the best. Saturday afternoon, we had a lot of wind. The evenings were quite cold. I think it was down to freezing the first night, and it was probably close to it last night. But everybody got wrapped up and got out of here before probably 11 this morning. So those that have a long way to go got a good start on it, so that's good too. We had people here from many different states. There were people from Minnesota, New York, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, California, and of course Arizona. I might be missing something. Anyways, we had a lot of people from all over the place, so that was awesome. It was awesome for people to come together. People drove a long distance and really enjoyed having them out here. So next year, I hope maybe we can pull it off again and you can try to attend. I appreciate you coming with me today. I'll catch you next time.